And welcome back. So for this third one, I want to show you how we can use lines again, but this time what we're going to do is we're actually going to, we're going to do a couple things. So I want to get you in the habit of seeing what you can accomplish with thick to thin lines. So starting more heavily at the base where the shadow would be, fading off as you go upwards, okay? And there's lots of ways you could do this. If you're working digitally, you could hold, on a software like this, you can actually hold shift. Or you know what, I'm sorry, that's not this software, that's another one. I'm so used to using different softwares. Here you'd have to use the ruler. And this would be more time consuming, but it's something you can do if you feel like your your hand-eye coordination, or your control, I should say, isn't quite there. And you could even copy these, right? You could draw one and copy them across, or I would recommend maybe draw one, copy it over, different varying widths, and then get in between it and fill them in. Because I kind of, personally, I've kind of like the hand-drawn look. So even if I'm going to do something overly digital, I try to mix it up. Okay? So that's one way you could do it. If you need a ruler, if it makes you feel more comfortable, I do want you to also make time to practice just doing this. And so all I'm doing there is I'm kind of sculpting the line. They're not all going to be perfect. In fact, none of them will be perfect. But that doesn't matter. It's about just getting a kind of organic feeling to the lines, I think. And I'm going to actually take this a bit further, and the way that I want to show you with this particular one, we'll do some cleaner ones later on, but then this one, I'm actually going to purposely bump it up like that. And I think that's a great way to look at it almost immediately, because what it does is it's easier for the most part. It's a lot harder to focus and get this nice, pristine, clean taper, I think anyways. I guess we're all different there. But I also like the texture and the imperfections that this provides. This is great for tattered material, brick, busted up concrete, or pipes, or you name it, just anything that's weathered. So we're going to do that one. But again, keep all those variables in mind, that you can use a ruler, that you could draw one and then edit it if that makes you help you to get through this bit of the tutorial. But don't let that always be your go-to. I think it makes sense to practice drawing by hand and developing your skills this way as well. And don't be in a rush to do it. Be patient with yourself. Yours also can be messier as far as like these breaks that I'm creating. I think these breaks add a lot of energy and effect to it. And it's actually easier. Oh, and by the way, you could actually draw in another layer beneath this. And, you can hold shift with this software. I'm sorry. So it's shift. I must not have held it down properly. I was just thinking, I use this all the time for grids. But you could draw a grid like that on a previous layer. Same thing with traditional. You could draw a grid with your ruler. Roller rulers are great for that. And then you could put it beneath the other sheet of paper on a light table if you got one. Some people will just use their screen if it's bright enough, or a window. That all works. Just be creative with it. But just these little line breaks. And you can even stagger them. Like, you can bring them off to the side a little bit. They don't need to be completely straight up and down. But hopefully you can see that just even by doing this, we're starting to get a little bit of fade. And you could go back down to the base, and you can widen these a little bit. Right? You could even go down to the base and widen them and create another shape. Right? So if I go with a curvature like this, again, I'm creating another, I don't know if you call that a negative shape, I guess you would. And that can be really fun. So you could go through this, and you could do like a wave, and you could taper these, still going stronger at the base, but maybe lightening them right as they come up to that other shape, and I would obviously put that in with another layer so I didn't have to erase it. You see what I mean? There's all sorts of neat and inventive ways that you can make this rendering more interesting to look at, dimensional, your own, your own style, your own imaginative way of piecing it together. There's just so many possibilities with this stuff. And something about doing these little breaks makes it a lot more relaxing for myself. Again, we could all be different there, but it's almost like the breaks give you a break. They give you a way out, a more easygoing way to look at it, where when we're trying to be so clean and pristine with our lines and our drawings, again, this could be more personal to me, but it's definitely what I feel is that I will get a little bit more anxious or critical, self-critical of what I'm doing. And there's times that I want things to be very clean, so I just do that. But I also take breaks from that way of thinking, maybe move over to something that is a little bit more gritty and lends to imperfections. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy loose sketching, especially as it pertains to figures and scenes. I would rather sit there and loose sketch all sorts of rough ideas because I'm in a non-critical part of my illustrative process, and it basically is more forgiving on my, I'm less likely to enter that perfectionist mentality, which is, I don't know, the more I look at it, the more I do this stuff, the more I think that's a very destructive way to be at times. Maybe everything in balance, but don't stay there too awfully long. Learn to critique your work to get better, but then get right back to loving everything that you do and realizing that the long-term journey is where the transformation happens, not the overly critical, I've got to be better tomorrow type mentality. That's a surefire way to drain the energy right out of it, I think. So again, you can see I'm just randomly placing these. I'm starting to get to where at the very tip I'm spacing them out further. You could go back and put like little dots and kind of blips here and there, right? And you can really push that. And this one's obviously a much faster approach, but I'm still going to time lapse this next little part just to speed it up for you. Again, it's more of the same. So let me do that right now and we will get this part wrapped up. And I just got to admit that a lot of times when I am doing a technique like this, I do see an opportunity to just copy one side and move it over to the other. But even if I do that with a layer or even folding the paper over and light tabling the other side, I just go back with some white out and I make sure to make it look a little bit more natural, a little bit more hand done. But again, I'm always looking for time savers when it is something, overly repetitive. And you can probably tell that out of the three effects, this one was actually much quicker. Okay, so there we go. And then also, like I mentioned, another thing you could do is you could practice adding a couple things really. You could add some lines this way. And again, they don't need to be as clean as you might think. So really they just add a little bit of texture, but in a sense it's sort of like cross-hatching because the more you add of these at the base and then slowly fade those up, if that's your goal, then you'll get a sort of darkness at the bottom and a little bit lighter effect at the top, and then you could break this texture off like this. So there's all sorts of ways you could approach this. So it doesn't need to be just 45-degree angles and things like that. You can really get super creative with this. You could go heavier with the textured lines at the base like this. And then you can also come back with your negative lines. You could go on top of these and make them pop a little bit more. Right, you could do something like that. You'll see this effect a lot with veins. Just that little bit that might catch the light. I'm not going to leave that, but that's just another thing to practice. And then another thing is just to come back through the tips of the part that you want to fade more. And again, you could do that over here. Same ideas. You could put negative shapes and squigglies all through there. So all this stuff is just great practice and gives you hopefully ideas for different ways to render. And again, these are just on a linear, or what I call an A-B fade. But now what I'm going to do, we'll go to the next lesson. We're going to talk more about wrapping certain lines around a spherical object, and talk about some of the lighting terminology. So with that, let's move on to our next lesson.